This is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Rebel Author Podcast, episode 12. Today's podcast is particularly jam-packed. I'm talking to Angela Ackerman, who, I'm not going to lie, I had to try and not fangirl because she has been one of these long-distance mentors for pretty much the whole of my writing career. I had the first iteration of the Emotion Thesaurus, which I'm sure most of you have, and I own all of her books in paperback and some of them in digital as well, and yeah, I've learned a lot, and I think you guys are going to learn a lot from this episode too. We're talking business planning, we're talking pay it forward marketing, we're talking how to create emotions, and also selling rights, so that it is packed basically, and I hope that you find it as useful as I did. So to this week's question. I don't think anybody answered the financial question last week, which I find particularly interesting. I almost wanted to say, why didn't anyone answer the question last week as this week's question, but I thought better of it. I wonder if it's still because money's taboo. I wonder if it's because it's a topic that you guys aren't interested in. I don't know, but I did find that interesting. The question that you all did answer was around the transcripts. Now, I wanted to know last week whether people read the transcripts on the show, because I do find them quite labour intensive to produce, and obviously because this is a free show, there is only so much time I can put into creating it. So I wanted to know how useful you found it, because obviously if you find the transcripts useful, I want to give them to you. Most of you did say that they were useful. I'm not sure if that's because those of you who don't read them didn't comment or what, but because all of the answers were super similar, I'm not going to do shout outs this week. I'm just going to summarise. And essentially, you either preferred reading them instead of the audio, which I think plays to possibly the written audience rather than the people who are actually listening to the audio, or you use them to refer to if there was a particularly useful point. So, I think they are useful. I think I might have to find another way to produce them, just so that they're not as time consuming. But on to today's question. Today, I want to know what business planning methods you find most useful. I have gone round and round the houses with business planning, and I've more or less got to the point, as I mentioned in the first show of this year, where I'm trying something new and I'm trying quarterly goals instead of yearly, in my head I have yearly goals, but I'm just not writing them down or committing to them because then I'm gonna rebel against them. So so anyway, tell me what methods. Is there a methodology that you follow? Is there somebody's particular book that you like? Hit me with it. How do you business plan? What methods do you find most useful? Okay, on to personal progress. I'm so excited to tell you guys this. I can barely contain myself. I am so freaking close to the end of the anatomizing. God, I'm that excited I can't even speak. I am so close to the end of the Anatomy of Prose, I can't even begin to tell you. So I am recording this on the morning of Monday the 20th of January, and this podcast episode will air on the 22nd of January, which is Wednesday. I think within these next 2 days, I will have finished. I am literally so excited. I think the reason I am beyond excited this time is twofold. The first one is because I'm really, really, really proud of this book. I have been really super vulnerable with it, but I'll explain all of that in another episode, probably an episode that I dedicate to the launch. But the second reason is because I haven't finished a book in a fucking year. So I am even more excited. I haven't finished a book since I left my job, and there was all that transition, blah, blah nonsense. So this is the first book I have finished since I quit my job. And for that reason, I am super proud. The last time I published was the 4th of January, 2019. So it's been over a year since I published. And so I'm going to make this a big old year for publishing, guys. So within 2 days, I'm done. I'm going to stop talking about it, but I'm going to be screaming from the rooftops, and I'm really sorry. Lowest voice. Yes, so I'll be going straight into edits. I'm not one of these people that waits for any period of time. I get it done, I get it edited, and I get it sent to my critique partners and editors. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that means within... Okay, wait, no, calm down. Calm down, Sasha. Calm down. Maybe not next week, but maybe the following week, I'm going to have a launch date. Yay! Okay, in other news, I have written 2 guest articles recently. The first one was over at writershelpingwriters.net. That is Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi's website. And I was writing about what are the basic things that you have to do financially to set yourself up in your writing business. So I will drop the links to that in the show notes. And the other article I wrote was a quick fire 4 tips for helping you create your villains. And that was over on the Insecure Writer Support Group. Now, the last newsy update before I go on, as some of you know, I am the Alliance of Independent Authors conference and blog manager. So I run their twice yearly conference. And at the moment they are having a whopper of a January sale. So what happens is the conference is free to everybody for about 48 hours? Yeah, 48 hours, 2-3 days anyway. See me trying to add another 24 to 48. Hence the pause. God. Hey, guys, seriously, I am not that bad at maths. I'm just bad at maths under pressure. I did get a good grade at school, I swear. Anyway, so the conference after that time goes in behind a paywall, and it's usually $199 to get access. But when you get access, not only do you get access to the current conference, you get access to all of the past conferences and all of the future conferences. So you're getting over 100 hours of content. And all of our sessions are from top industry professionals, the likes of Michael Andelays, the likes of Brian Meeks and Mark Lefebvre and, oh my goodness, Ricardo from Reedsy and all of those big, industry professionals. So it is well worth it. I will put a link to the pass and how to get that in the show notes. Just a couple of points. This is time limited. The sale ends on the 24th of January. So when this airs on Wednesday, you will only have 2 days. And if you're listening in the future, well, I'm sorry, but you missed the sale. And the second one is, I am an affiliate for the conference. I'm a speaker at the conference, so it's only right that I am also affiliate. So if you do decide to purchase it using my link, then thank you very much for the coffee that you'll be giving me. Okay, Listener Rebel of the Week. This week, the Listener Rebel is Zack Geoffrey. This is a quick little story, but one that I love nonetheless. Zack says, the theatre department in my college cancelled a reading of my work because one of the actors skipped class. So I borrowed the keys to the theatre and we had the reading anyway. I love that. I love that, rebellions can come in any shape or form. They don't have to be big. They can be small. They can be massive. And I love that you just rebelled and did the reading anyway. That's the kind of thing I'd have done. So good for you. So if you would like to be a Rebel of the Week, please, please, please do send in your stories. It can be, as I've said, any kind of rebellion, big or small, or in between for that matter. And you can email your story to oh my goodness me, I'm going to put my teeth in. You can email your Rebel story to rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com or tweet me at rebelauthorpod. So I have an interesting book recommendation this week. Normally I try to stick to, business or writing craft books, but today I've got a fiction book for you. As I draw near the end of The Anatomy of Prose, I wanted to share with you over the next couple of weeks a couple of the books that I have read and loved and think have excellent prose. And the first one is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. Now, I'm recommending this one particularly because I've just started the sequel called The Night Country, which came out this month. But The Hazelwood is an interesting one. It is, I believe, young adult. It's sort of set in the real world and the fairy tale world. It's a bit creepy. But what I love about Melissa Albert's style of writing is that her prose is luxurious. If it was any more luxurious, it might be purple prose, but it's not. She definitely keeps it in the acceptable end of that spectrum. And also she has this wonderfully exquisite way of describing characters. Her voice is absolutely crystal clear. I've never read anyone like her, and for that reason I think she's a very, very, very interesting author to dissect and examine the methods and the tactics and the devices and the tricks that she's using in her prose in order for you to be able to lift some of those tactics and methods into your own work. So my recommendation is The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert this week. No new patrons today, but as always, a massive, massive thank you to all my current patrons who help to ensure that this podcast continues. And on that note, I did send out this month's question box to ask what you would like the topics to be. I've had a couple, and I will do the other ones that I've been requested in subsequent months, but one particular one requested a sneak peek at The Anatomy of Prose. So I will pick out an excerpt this month, and bear in mind it won't have been completely edited, but I will give you guys a sneak peek at it. If you would like to support the show and get access to all of the bonus essays, posts, content, sneak peeks, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Sasha Black, and that's Sasha with a C and not an S. On with the show. Hello and welcome back to the Rebel Author Podcast. Today I am with the absolutely amazing Angela Ackerman. Angela is a writing coach, an international speaker, and co-author of the best-selling book The Emotion Thesaurus, a writer's guide to character expression, which is now an expanded second edition, which I own, and if you don't, you really ought to. She also has many, many sequels, of which I also own all of them, and I highly recommend them. I'm trying not to fangirl here. Clearly it's not working. Her books are available in 7 languages, are sourced by US universities, recommended by agents and editors, and are used by novelists, screenwriters, and psychologists around the world. Angela is also the co-founder of the popular site Writers Helping Writers, as well as One Stop Shop for Writers, an innovative, creative library built to help writers elevate their storytelling. Welcome, Angela. It is a huge honour to have you here today.
I think I am the one who's honoured.
What? Oh my goodness me, I think my brain just melted. For those who don't know, I have been a long-term fan of Angela and Becca and all of their thesauri, of which I've had the first one for an awfully long time, and it's all tatty and covered in coffee and crumpled edges, which I now find horrifying because I try to keep my books very clean and smooth. But I think you the books that you guys create are just the number one writing tool, writing book that every single author should own. So yes, thank you so much for coming. Oh, and so sorry, I will stop. I'm just, thank you for being here.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet, and thank you very much. It never gets old hearing that our books are actually really helping people, because I don't know, description and show don't tell specifically is something that we all struggle with to some degree. It's something that we all hear, show don't tell, but we don't really understand the extent of how it infiltrates like every aspect of storytelling. So,
Totally.
Yeah,
Completely.
super glad these guys.
Yeah, and it's not just show don't tell though. You have your locations, your rural, your urban, your emotional wounds. And I have to say, I'm not sure if it's the wounds or the original emotion thesaurus that I love best, but both of those I think combined really help a writer to dig down and create better characterization and deeper characters. So whatever you're doing, hit pause, go order the books. Okay, right, let's get on with the episode. So tell listeners a little bit more about you and your journey and how you got into full-time writing.
I'm a Canadian, so I live in Canada, and like most writers out there, you feel a little bit isolated when you start. I wasn't involved in any in-person groups. I didn't know any other writers in my real world, so I went online to try to connect with other people because I knew that, I thought that I was a pretty good storyteller, but I needed help. And I needed to learn how to become a stronger writer. And I really needed the feedback from other people to kind of gauge where I was on the path and if I was headed in the right direction, if what I was writing was actually publishable, all of that. And so I ended up on a site called Critique Circle. Oh my God. And the Critique Circle is an online critique site where people from all over the world in all different genres, they kind of get together and they put their work up for other people to critique. And I learned so much there, just so much about good, strong storytelling. And I really, through the eyes of other people, I learned kind of where my weaknesses were. And this happens to be where I met Becca Puglisi, who is my co-author. And she's my partner in crime on my blog and at One Stop for Writers. And her and I, we just really enjoyed each other's work, and we really forged a strong friendship, and both really were passionate about learning writing craft and growing as writers and also helping other people. And I think that's kind of where we sort of jogged left a little bit, because we started the Critique Circle, both of us with plans of, becoming fiction authors. And that's still a plan for both of us. But along the way, we realized that we really had a passion for learning writing and sharing what we know. We started blogging together, and that blog led to this whole series of thesaurus books that we write, which look at different aspects of description that is just really hard for writers to master and to use fully. If you take setting, for example, a lot of people think of setting as, well, we want to make sure that we're describing the setting vividly enough that people can see what's going on. But really, setting is responsible for so much more than that. There's so much more that you can do with it, including, characterizing your story's cast. You can use it to foreshadow. You can evoke mood. You can steer your reader's emotions, steer the character's emotions. There's just so many different ways to use sensory description to really power up your novel. And so we started exploring each topic and really digging deep into each one. You mentioned the emotion thesaurus and the emotional wound thesaurus. A big piece that has resonated with writers is anything to do with characterization, because as you've noted, the deeper a character is, the more compelling it is to follow in a story, and you feel really pulled into the character's point of view and what they're experiencing, and it's just so much better of an experience for readers. So we started writing these writing guides, and it turned into this whole huge, massive thing that's kind of been our main focus is writing our writing guides, and then bringing them to life as well through One Stop for Writers, which is a site that we have that not only has all of our thesauruses that we've ever created, which are like 16 of them. I know there's only 6 books, but there's actually, we've written many, many, many different thesauruses on different topics. And then Becca and I also like building different types of creative tools that will really help writers demystify different aspects of storytelling, like building strong characters, like structuring stories, and just making it all easier so that writers focus on what they're best at, which is actually writing the story.
So of those 16, obviously I'm clearly asking here for entirely selfish reasons, but are those other or are all of the 16 going to come out, please?
As books?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to break your heart a little. Probably not. Or if, well, I won't say no for sure, but some topics are more suited to be books than others.
Yeah.
Because some topics are bigger than others. For example, we have one that's all about different types of weather, and it's super awesome. I mean, it really shows writers how to use that element effectively in your storytelling to, create that foreshadowing and to build that mood and things like that, to stay away from the cliches that we all know about, and use that sensory description. But there's really only so many different types of weather that you can describe. It wouldn't be a book in the sense that people are used to seeing our writing guides. It would be a smaller volume.
Yeah.
But others will definitely become books. The one we're working on right now is all on occupations, and that's the next one that will be out in 2020.
I mean, even if you published a smaller version, I would buy it. And I'm pretty sure everybody listening would buy it too. So I mean, whatever you publish, we're going to buy. I wanted to come back on one of the things that you were saying about emotion, because it's so I'm working on something called The Anatomy of Prose at the moment. So it's kind of looking at the nitty gritty detail of what you do at the sentence level and how that can impact character creation, and what is that aspect where writers learn how to find their voice. It's not prescriptive in the this is right and this is wrong, because I think that's all bullshit anyway. A writer's voice is a writer's voice. But something you said about emotion, and I think that is the universal thread that kind of pulls every reader through the journey. But something I was thinking about today, I can't remember exactly what you said that jogged me, but I think the more detailed you go, and this is the beauty of your books, because they have so much detail in there and so many little what's the word, like rabbit warrens you can go down with the level of detail. It's the detail in what each character says, does, describes, feels, that really makes emotion universal, which sounds bizarre, because when you write a character with a huge level of detail that is based on the things and their perceptions of how they look at setting, this is what you're saying, how they're perceiving and feeling about the setting, even though it's personal to them, it's that level of detail that makes it universal that we then reflect in, and so that is one of the reasons that I love the Emotion Thesaurus, and in fact all of them really, because you do give us so much detail that we can the number of possibilities for creating characters is just infinite. So yeah, thanks guys. Okay, so for as long as I've known you, you've used the pay it forward marketing method. So could you tell listeners what that means first of all?
Okay. I don't think of it that way, but I can see why other people would think of it that way. For me, I do something that I really enjoy, which is to help people. So basically what I do with my marketing is I build goodwill with people by giving generously. And it's not a gimmick or an angle. It's not anything like that. It's just that helping people is a really big part of my philosophy. It's a big part of Becca's philosophy. It's one of the reasons that we, gel so well together. Like I said, we really are passionate about this. And so we basically feel that if you can help someone, then do. And so we've incorporated that, into our marketing in the sense that it's all about understanding who our audience really is and what they need most. We're very lucky in the sense that our audience are writers. And so as writers ourselves, we're really keyed into exactly what it is that we all need and where we struggle the most. And so it's very easy for Becca and I to sort of sit back, think about those struggles and go, okay, well, how can we help? What can we do with our knowledge, with the tools that we built, with our connections to other people, with the resources that we have, with the different kinds of links that we curate, whatever it is, the people that we know, how can we help other writers solve these problems? And that's essentially what we do, is just really think about how we can deliver things that our audience needs. And this builds trust, because people know that we are there for them, that we are invested in their success, that we believe that we're all in this together, and that what we're doing is very genuine. And because they trust us and they trust our recommendations and they know that we're really invested in them, I think that it creates an environment where they feel really good about promoting our work, sharing our work with other people, because they find it valuable. They find the information that we share really valuable. So it's a twofold thing where they want to reciprocate in a sense that we have helped them in some way, and they want to help us in return. But they also are being genuine about it because they too are getting value from the things that we do, and they care about other writers, and they want those other writers to benefit in the same way that they have. So it's kind of this beautiful engine where we're all just really helping each other in whatever way, we're best suited to do.
Absolutely. And I think you guys have really found that thing that you're passionate about as well. And I think that obviously shows in all of the things that you do. And I think when you embody that fully, it is like your tribe kind of flocks to you, as well as you kind of giving out, and it's like this beautiful reciprocal kind of, I don't know, karma, I suppose.
It totally is.
Yeah. And I think, it's a real lesson to, as part of this indie self-publishing kind of journey, to work out who you are and what you want to say, and then say it passionately. But I totally agree. So for anybody who would like to give back, I suppose, and feels like they would like to use a very similar ethos or mindset, do you have any tips on how they should start and how they should build their own platform, I suppose?
Well, I think that it definitely has to be something that's authentically them, right? It has to be a part of who you are. You can't think of it as like a tactic, because it's not a marketing tactic. If you're only doing it to get something, then it's not going to feel genuine, and other people are going to know that. So really, you want to be thinking about what you can give and not what you can get, and just trust that everything will work out. And it doesn't really matter if, like, in some senses, I get other people who will say, well, Angela, that works really great for you because you're a nonfiction author and you have writers as your audience, but what about me as a fiction author? Like, how can I build this sort of relationship with my readers? And it really, the same techniques can happen. I don't like you saying techniques, but the same mechanism can happen for a fiction author just as it can for someone who's a nonfiction author. The only difference is the subject matter expert area. So as a nonfiction author, I mean, I know that my audience specifically, they're going to struggle with a lot of things to do with writing craft. They're going to struggle with a lot of things to do with imposter syndrome and all of these different things. So the information and the help that I am going to give them is going to meet those needs. But a fiction author, they are going to have a very specific audience based on the type of books that they write. If they write something about, I don't know, if they write romance books that incorporate dogs in some way, like maybe every single romance that they write, it's all about dog lovers. It's always about a vet and somebody who trains dogs or rescues dogs. And there's always that element of just people who really love dogs. And that's part of the romance plot that they're building in each book. If they've written something like that, clearly the common denominator with their reading audience is that they're going to be people who love dogs. They're going to be romance readers, but they're also going to love dogs. So that is a subject matter, a subject that where they can be a subject matter expert in. And they can think about, okay, my audience that really loves, they love dogs, they love hearing about dogs. What kind of content can I share that's going to entertain them, that's going to interest them, that maybe is going to help them out with little problems that they have with their own dogs if they have a dog? What kind of, funny videos can I share? What kind of memes can I share? What kind of sites are out there that are going to get people interested? What events are happening that have to do with dogs? What great charities are there that are doing excellent works for people who love dogs? There's a whole, there's a whole world of information out there keyed towards this very specific group of people that are going to enjoy this book. And above and beyond all of that, there are also going to be other authors out there writing books that are about people who love dogs too. And the reality is that some writers, they feel really resistant in recommending other people's books that are a lot like theirs. But I don't understand this, because the reality is we're not competition. If I read a book that's really good, like when I read your books, for example, I know they're really high quality. I know that these are going to help writers. I don't see you as competition. I see you as someone that has an incredible amount of knowledge that's really going to help writers. And I feel really good about sending people to your books and to your site. And I don't think of you as competition, because the reality is that, I mean, can we ever have enough craft books?
No, we definitely cannot.
No, we cannot. And our readers, one thing we know about them is that they love to read. And we will never, ever, ever be able to write books fast enough to keep them satisfied.
Exactly.
So why not pass them on to other people where we've read their books, we love their books, we're happy to play matchmaker. And again, that continues to build that trust. Readers understand, you know what, okay, Angela, she's busy, she hasn't put out a book in 6 months, it's okay, I've read her book, it's all good. But she says to read these 3 books, and I'm going to read them because I trust her judgment. I know these books are going to be great. And it's the same thing if you're a fiction author. It's okay to promote other authors, because it keeps your readers engaged with you. They're engaged because they know that even though you're working on your next book and you don't have anything to maybe offer them right now as far as new reads, you're still thinking about them. You still care about them, and you still want to make sure that they're being taken care of while they're waiting for your next book. So absolutely, this method of building trust and being there for your audience and understanding what it is that they really need, what they really want, what they really enjoy, that's all super important. And it doesn't matter if you write fiction or nonfiction, either way you can do that.
Yeah, there's so many things that I love about everything that you've just said. There's a phrase that I hear really often in the indie community, and I always get it slightly wrong, but I think it's the rising tide lifts all the boats, or something, along those lines. Yeah, and I just think that's so true, because indies are so willing to collaborate and work with each other, and it is so true. I am not one of these people who reads as many books as some of the I write young adult for my fiction. At the moment I'm writing young adult fantasy, but some of the girls I see on Instagram are just consuming books. There is no possible way an author in their entire lifetime could satisfy that kind of voracious reader. I think I read between 60 and 75 books a year, and even that's a lot of books for one author to be able to produce that many books in a year, let alone and that's the beauty of being a reader, is that we like to delve into all these different things. So I love that. And also it's quite goes back to what you were saying earlier about finding that thing that you love and that you're passionate about, and then going deep, creating as much content as you possibly can to share that with people who love the things that you love as well. I was thinking a bit about like this explosion of expressionist poetry on Instagram, that and that's how they're finding their audience, and also podcasting. I know quite a few fiction authors now who are finding vast amounts of readers because they're publishing, whether it be short fiction or horror fiction or whatever, on podcasts. So yeah, I just love everything that you're saying. Next question. So there is no possible way I could have you on this show without asking about creating emotion in characters. What are the key elements to creating emotion?
I would say first and foremost is building a bond between your reader and your character, because readers are not going to care about what the character's going through and their emotions if they don't care about that character. If they can't really understand them and feel empathy for them. So you really want to build that bond, really know the character inside and out, understand what's motivating them, what they fear, all of those different things, so that you can build these really realistic, compelling layers that make a character feel like a real person. Real people are complex, and our characters should be complex as well. And I think that when we build characters that are really deep, and they're almost a mirror of the real world. They're a mirror of the reader themselves. They have common fears, they have common experiences that they've had, and they feel emotions, the drivers of what might be happening in the story to the character to cause an emotion. That might be unique. It might be something that the reader has never experienced themselves, but they've all experienced that emotion at some point in time. You know, we all know what it's like to feel betrayed or powerless. We all know what it's like to fail or to screw up. And so if you can kind of build the deep character and really build in struggles and emotions that readers can relate to, that is really going to create that connection between the reader and the character. And then when they're in the moment and they're experiencing this situation that is causing them to feel these complex emotions, sometimes conflicting emotions, readers are really going to feel drawn in because they've been there. They've felt those things. They've been stuck with really terrible options and choices. They've been in situations where they've made a big mistake and now they have to figure out how are they going to undo this thing, or how are they going to face up to it? How are they going to accept responsibility for it? All of these things are common experiences that we can pull from the everyday world, put them into storytelling that are just going to make that character seem so much more real and relatable. So I would definitely say like that's a really big part of it. I think the other thing is to understand, again, when you're digging deep, to understand who your character is and really looking at their history, understanding, you know, where their personality came from, all of that kind of stuff. You want to be thinking about that internal landscape, especially the emotional landscape and their emotional range. So you want to know things like, is your character expressive, or are they reserved? Are they the type of person who is going to share what they feel? Are they going to, you know, want to sit down and talk to somebody, talk it through? Or are they sort of the type of people that they bottle it all up, they hold it in until like there's this big explosion? When they act on what they feel, you know, what's that going to look like? Is it going to come through hurtful things that they say, really definitive actions that maybe they regret afterwards, or is it more subtle? And so understanding those things about your character, it adds these layers of realism, and makes that person feel so much more unique, like a real person. Mm. The thing that we have to remember about our characters is that every action, choice, and decision and behavior should always line up with who they are, right? Yeah. That's really important, because that's how our readers actually, they pay attention to the character's behavior to navigate the story, to understand what's important to the character, what should I care about, what's the goal here, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And so understanding who your character is deep down and how emotion is going to come out through those actions and decisions and choices, it makes the whole novel so much more compelling, and the journey so much more compelling, because everything lines up beautifully with who that character is. So I can't underscore enough to really understand who your character is deep down.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice, especially you were saying earlier about what their reaction would be if they were, say, for example, a sort of emotionally reserved person. I think that's really key, because it also creates consistency, and I think that's part of being human. We are very habitual creatures, and we react in very predictable ways until we suddenly don't, and quite often that's when, you know, your protagonist will face a obstacle or whatever, and then eventually they get over their flaw, which is whatever's keeping them consistent and stopping them from fulfilling their I can't think of the word. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, have you ever seen Game of Thrones, out of interest?
I haven't. I know. Oh my gosh.
OMG. Okay, wow. Well, I guess I can't talk about that then.
I totally want to.
Yeah.
But it's not on my channels.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I was going to say George R.R. Martin does some of that really, really well, because he quite often will create characters with really strong inner values, and they behave very consistently against those inner values, and then suddenly he will pit a very difficult decision against those inner values, and I think that always makes for a really interesting characterization and plot.
Oh, totally. totally agree.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it when any character's moral ground, their line in the sand is challenged. You
Yeah.
put them in a situation where, they really do have to decide, like, am I going to hold to this belief
Yeah.
or not? I love it.
Yeah, me too. Or when they have two bad decisions, which bad decision do they go with?
Exactly.
I love that. I love it. I love it. Oh, I'm geeking out. Anyway, sorry. Right. Nitty gritty. Let's go down to the sentence level. What kind of techniques could an author use to evoke emotion?
I would say to really think carefully about each and every word. Often we can do a lot more with less if we power up our language. So you're going to want to use very specific verbs, verbs they plant an image in the reader's mind. You want to describe actions and thoughts and viscerals in a way that just conveys that immediate image that a reader can really picture it. So I wrote down an example here. I'm going to read it off. I could say something like, Laura paced, her mind stuffed with the hate-laced barbs that she would unleash on Desi when he got home. Or I could say something like, Laura stomped laps around the kitchen table, hands flexing, jaws tight. Desi was a dead man. Like, which one can you actually see?
Oh yeah, 100%.
So that's what we need to think about is how can I show it to the reader? Like, how can I build something? You can imagine those hands flexing, like in and out, just the pacing, the jaw tight, teeth kind of gritting together. You can imagine all of those things. You can see it. And then, Desi was a dead man. Like, boom, you get the sense of what that character's feeling in that moment. So that's kind of what we want to do, is just make sure that everything is conveying that image, and that we're trying to keep that word economy, because especially if the pacing is really strong, you've got a high action scene or something like that. You don't want sentences and sentences of flowery description. That's just not realistic for that type of scene. Your character isn't going to stop and think about everything, right? They're just going to act. They're not going to notice everything. They're just going to focus on the things that are critical to their mindset in that moment. So it's really about putting ourselves in the character's shoes and thinking like they would in that moment, and think about what are they perceiving from the room that they're in and why. And only painting a picture of the details that really matter, not everything. Not that there's a cold cup of coffee on the table, or like details that don't matter to the scene. You want to focus on the things that matter, that reinforce that emotional state.
Yeah, absolutely. And the beauty of this is you can play with the technique and the pacing. So it's funny, I was literally writing about this today, in that 90% of your action scene should be, these short staccato sentences, fast paced actions, very little, emotional sensory description, if it's kind of a hardcore battle scene. But then you can play with that, and let's say your protagonist sees somebody that they care deeply about die, you can slow down 1 or 2 seconds of their realization of what's happened, and extend the metaphor, or because that's what matters to that character in that moment. So yeah, I love that, and I love the fact. Sorry.
And that's so no, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think, just playing on what you said, I think too, like, that's where symbolism can come in and be very powerful. Because if someone has, that you love, has just died, what is the character going to notice about that person that has special meaning to them? Is it a gift that they gave them? Are they wearing something? Did they just give them a flower like 5 minutes before, and the person just stuck it in their lapel, and now, oh my gosh, they're dead? And it just slow things down and focus on that one detail that has a connection to that character, that symbolizes something greater than what it actually is.
Yeah. Love it. I feel super geeking out right now on all things wordy. So let's flip this on its head and talk about mistakes that you see authors making with when they're trying to create emotion. What do you see most often?
A few things. I would say one would be not going deep enough. So not personalizing that emotion to that specific character, and not letting their character show a vulnerable side. I think that's a big one. A lot of A lot of writers don't want to hurt their characters. Especially if they're writing characters that are tough. You know, they've been hurt. The world has hurt them. They're damaged. They're damaged goods, and it's hard sometimes because legitimately they have a very high shield around themselves, especially where their emotions are concerned, because life has, served them up a lot of lemons, and so they're very used to getting hurt and they don't want to get hurt again, and so they do create the shield around themselves. But you do need to build in moments where that shield slips, where you do show that inner vulnerability, where you do get real with how the character feels in the moment in a specific circumstance where maybe they've failed, or there's a mistake that they've made, or they feel something unexpected, something that they thought maybe they were dead to because they've just been hurt so much in the past, and then unexpectedly they're affected in a way that they weren't expecting. I think those kind of moments are super powerful, and by not allowing that vulnerability to show through, because writers are afraid that maybe the reader's going to think that their character's weak, I think that that's a mistake. I think instead it actually makes them seem more real, more like real people.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a big one. The other one that I see is naming emotions, and this is something that is so easily fixed with a search and replace, to look for places where you actually name the emotion. It's very rare that you actually need to say what an emotion is, because that's what show don't tell is all about. If you're showing an emotion through something that the character's doing, through the way that they're perceiving their world, through thoughts that they have, whatever that looks like, through their actions, you won't need to tell by telling the emotion, by naming that emotion. And often writers they'll name the emotion because they're worried that maybe they didn't do a strong enough job of showing it. And so they kind of just tag it on, just in case you didn't know, they shivered with fear, like that sort of thing. You almost never need that. You almost never need to say what it is. You should be just describing it. And so I always encourage people to really challenge themselves to think about, how can I render this emotion on the page in a way where it's really 100% clear that this character he's shivering in fear. He's not shivering because he's cold or for some other reason. You know what I mean? It's how can I build elements through my description that's just going to reinforce this particular feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I don't think I have anything else to even comment. That was just such a good answer. You've recently sold translation rights. Can you talk us through the process, how you went about selling them, and any lessons that you guys have learned from that experience?
Yeah, so it was really interesting what happened in our case, because of course we're self-published, so we weren't really thinking about translation rights from the get-go or anything like that. It's different now, but back when we first published The Emotion Thesaurus, it was like 2012. And so back then, self-publishing was still a really dirty word. And, we weren't really thinking along those lines that maybe there was potential for our books in other languages. But what started happening is that we were being approached by sub-agents in other countries asking if the rights were available. And Becca and I were pretty busy already with all the other stuff that we were trying to manage. And we both felt like the last thing that we wanted to tack on to everything else is trying to work with publishers in another country when there's language barriers, when there's a lot of things that you need to know as a publisher or as the owner of a property like that, like tax law and withholding tax and things like that. There's lots of different things to know. So we thought we should find an agent to kind of work with these people and see if a deal can be made. So we did look around. We mentioned our situation to a few different agents, and we finally found a really great one. Marlene Seeger is at 2C's Literary, and it's been great. I mean, if someone comes to us and they ask if the rights are available, we just pass them on to Marlene, and then she and her agents and the sub-agents in each country, they kind of work with that publisher to see if a deal can come about. And if she's at different events, publishers approach her about it, then she contacts us with potential deals. So it's been really, really great. And I'm so glad we went this route, because some of our books have done really well in some countries, like, for example, Japan. Our books, The Emotion Thesaurus especially, and The Studying Thesaurus, were super popular over there. The Setting Thesaurus was the #1 book out of all books sold on Amazon.
Wow.
It was on TV, it was on BuzzFeed, it was on all different kinds of stuff down there, which was just fantastic. And we would have never maybe thought on our own to explore, foreign rights. So I'm really, really glad that we did. I would say that you definitely can choose to go it yourself. You can choose to negotiate these rights on your own. I do know authors that do it, and I know that there's support systems in place to find that kind of information. Joanna Penn, I know that she has had people on about foreign rights. I know that she has resources on her blog and stuff like that. Allie is another one where, they can be very helpful with that kind of information. In our case, we decided to actually work with an agent, and like I said, it's been really helpful to have a go-between, especially to sort of find out information about withholding tax and what that looks like, and to have somebody, give the publisher a nudge if you haven't gotten your royalty statements yet and all that kind of stuff. All of this was very new to Becca and I because before we started self-publishing, we were not traditionally published, so we did not have any exposure to that sort of side of publishing. So we found having an agent has been really fantastic. So I would just make sure that you choose an agent that is, their backlog, their other clients are people that are in your space, that are, their books that are a lot like yours, so that you know that they have good contacts.
And is that how you sort of initiated your searches, by looking at similar books and authors and who their agents and publishers might be? Yeah,
that's exactly what we did.
Okay.
I think we looked on Amazon to see who had foreign editions and for writing guides, and then who were the publishers for those foreign editions.
Yeah. As somebody who's a fellow only ever indie, this whole trad world's just mind-boggling to me. I've never even queried, so I find it all very interesting. And you mentioned Ally there, and they're doing a 6-month program at the moment called the Ally Foreign Translation Rights Program, and they've got a few authors in different genres all trying to sell rights at the London Book Fair, and they're recording the sessions every 6 weeks or 4 weeks that I think we're doing them, and it's just fascinating seeing the process and how indies, because actually indies selling rights is still quite new. Obviously there are indies who've been selling rights for a while, but it's not as mainstream as, say, for example, the Kindle has now become, from 10 years ago. So yeah, I find this whole arena really interesting, and especially because I haven't ever queried, so I'm like, yeah, but how do you do that? And so I'm asking all the naive questions now, but thank you.
No, it was really great. And I think, too, the other thing to remember is that you don't necessarily need an agent. You can decide to do it yourself. You can hire a translator and, work with a translator one-on-one. That's another, the wonderful thing about being indie is that there's so many options. Nothing is really off the table as far as processes to get your work out to your readers. That's the great thing about being in this side of things.
Yeah, and also you can try things, and if it doesn't work or you don't like it, well, just sack it off and try something else, because we have that power. We're not contracted to anyone. Okay, so I talk about multiple streams of income all of the time. I think it's really important for a variety of reasons, not least of which to protect yourself and your sort of financial no, the word's gone. Financial security, that's the word I'm looking for. God, must be late at night. Any tips for listeners who would like to have multiple streams of income? Because obviously you guys have 2 businesses essentially, don't you? Can you talk to us a little bit about your second business and how you manage the chaos of what must be running 2 separate businesses?
Chaos is a very good word. Well, definitely, I think that if you are trying to financially support yourself through your writing, we do need to think wide. We need to think about our intellectual property and all the different ways that it can be used. And for a lot of writers, they become speakers. They they'll speak to certain groups, subject matter that is tied into their book. If you wrote a book about, I don't know, let's take the dog lover example. If you did a bunch of research in that space, and there was some kind of event for dog lovers, maybe some kind of conference or some big thing with different booths and stuff like that, maybe there's an opportunity to get involved with that organization. Maybe there's an opportunity to run a workshop of some kind, to let people into the world of a writer and a dog lover, something along those lines. Another avenue that a lot of writers go for is they actually go to writing conferences and they teach writing, because of course we all have to learn how to write well in order to be an author, to be a successful author. And so a lot of people, they enjoy sharing what they know, and they teach workshops, and that can be another stream of revenue for people. I would definitely recommend that if you're a fiction author, to try to think of what ties to your book, because you're much more likely to find your readers within the audience of events that are tied to that specific area than you would potentially, say, teaching at a writers' conference that could have, many different writers that are in different genres, that only a tiny subset may actually, read the type of books that you write. It's not that that's not off the table, but try to think about opportunities where you could do speaking where you're more going to be directly aligned to people that are most likely to be connected to your book through whatever makes it special.
Yeah.
But yet for myself, Becca and I, we love creating these writing guides, but a problem that we ran into is that our guides are very big, as you know, and heavy. And as we were, each and every one, as we were putting them out, we're thinking, oh my gosh, like these poor people that are carrying like these stack of books to bookstore, to their, like they're writing in a coffee shop and they're hauling, these phone books around. My goodness, because a lot of writers do like our books in print because they're very, very easy to navigate. You can see everything, all the information on a particular emotion on a 2-page spread and things like that. So, we realized that ebooks are not like they work for many people. Do like ebooks because they're very portable, they're not heavy, but they're also not quite the best format for our books, because we really like giving people the option of being able to see everything on a single entry all at once, because it really helps you brainstorm quickly. You're not scrolling through 6 pages on a Kindle to see all the information that we have. So we were thinking outside the box, how else can we kind of frame this information and make it helpful for people? And so we got together with Lee Powell, who's the creator of Scrivener for Windows, and we built One Stop for Writers. And One Stop for Writers allowed us to do 2 things. First of all, put all of our thesaurus content in one place, because some are books, some were on our blog, some were on our hard drives, and so we really needed it all to be in one place. Anyone who has used our books, they know how useful they can be for brainstorming. So when you have 16 of those type of thesauruses where you can look up talents and skills, or symbolism, or setting, or weather, or any of these different topics, character motivation, emotion, when you can see it all in one place, it just makes everything so much easier. The second thing that One Stop for Writers allowed us to do was, Beck and I are out-of-the-box thinkers, and one reason why I think our guides have worked really well is because we challenged what the idea of a writing guide is. Our thesauruses are part educational, where we teach you how to use better description in a particular area, but then most of it is a thesaurus where we break down all the micro topics within that topic of setting or emotion or wounds or whatever the topic is, and we go through it all and create this incredible list of ideas. And so thinking outside the box in that case really helped us think about how to help writers in a new way. That's a really big part of who we are. And we also like thinking about other ways we can help writers. So we built all different sorts of tools that don't exist, things that as writers ourselves, we really need. We know are going to make it so much easier for us to build strong characters and really powerful stories. And so One Stop for Writers has kind of become this library where we've been able to build all these different types of tools that just make all those puzzle pieces of storytelling so much easier to manage. Now, it is a bit of a balancing act, because it essentially is a whole second business that we have to run. Becca and I think what makes us successful is that we have an excellent relationship with Lee at One Stop for Writers. All 3 of us bring different skill sets to the table. We all are responsible for different things based on our strengths and weaknesses. And so together we make a really powerful team. We really need to understand our time and the value of our time and make sure that we're really well organized. As you know from the conversation that we've had recently in your Facebook group, we're big on making business plans. And so every year, Beck and I will create a business plan for Writers Helping Writers and our books, and then for One Stop for Writers. And so we have to figure out, okay, how are we splitting our time this year? What are the big projects that we want to get done? Where our focus is? And what are the action items that we need to carry out by the end of the year? And it really comes down to becoming very good at kind of getting a read on, when am I overreaching and trying to do too much? Like, what can I reasonably get done? I know this is
I know, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to giggle
like
here.
a private joke here because this is such a struggle, right?
Yes, the struggle is real.
The struggle is real, right? Because we always overreach. We're like, I can write 6 books this year. You know, like we're always overreaching, and we have these grand plans in January of all the things we want to accomplish. But we need to remember that you need to build in time for things to go off the rails, for new opportunities to come on board, which is fine. But it also means that we need to get very good at assessing those opportunities as they come along. And so Beck and I, we understand what our big goals are for One Stop for Writers, for Writers Helping Writers every year. And when opportunities come along to join, participate in different collaborative marketing events, or to go, if someone invites us to a conference to speak or something like that, we have to look at, is there time in the business plan, and is it helping me with one of the goals that I have for this business? And if the answer is yes, then we definitely will take advantage of that opportunity. But if the answer is no, then we have to sometimes decide to step back from that opportunity and just say, you know, unfortunately, the timing is not going to work. Keep me in mind for next year, something along those lines.
So, because you've brought up business plans, I'm going to go totally off script here. How do you find that having Becca because you are partners in crime, that also means you are accountable to each other? So do you find that the creation of the business plan, you become... okay, so what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is, I quite often will write, whether it be a business plan or a list of goals or things that I want to achieve in a year, by about June, I've gone off and done several other things. So I don't know if that's because I want to rebel against the structure that I've put in, or if it's because I have, you know, I'm a shiny magpie syndrome, or what. But do you find that having somebody there like helps you to be more accountable? Do you find that you then end up staying on plan? I think the two things I struggle with most are, one, sticking to a plan and a rough timeline, and the second one is just that, as you were saying, knowing what's actually realistic and being able to match that to time, because I'm like, I'm gonna do all of the things this year,
right?
You know, I'm definitely not gonna do all of the things, but I want to, I really do.
Well, I think like for Beck and I, we didn't start with business plans, but we would just kind of go through the year and have, kind of loose timelines. Okay, we're going to publish this book in September, so it means that we have to be organized by blah, and the final revisions have to be in by here, and all that kind of stuff. But the rest was just all kind of like, misty, for lack of a better word. Like maybe something will happen in there. I don't know. I'm sure we'll fill our time, because there's always way too much work and never enough time. That's the thing that's common with all of us, because we all have families and other responsibilities. Some people have other jobs. That's just life. But where we got stuck is that we were starting to get frustrated, because we felt like we were always, certain things were getting pushed to the next year. We don't have time to work on the website. We don't have time to do this. And it starts to get to you, because these little things that you don't address suddenly become big things and stumbling blocks, where you want to do something really big and cool, but because you've got these little things hampering, you don't have in place, you don't have a good kind of platform for marketing or whatever it is, or you haven't really researched something, you realize you can't take advantage of that opportunity. So that's kind of where you have to realize, okay, time for the big girl panties to go on or the big boy panties to go on, and get organized. And so that's where Beck and I got to, is it's like we need to organize ourselves. And once we started following a business plan, everything changed for us. We were so much more productive because we followed this plan. And the link, you can share the link if you want with the show notes on this if you like. But Beck and I, my husband is a business management consultant, and he helps people with business plans all the time. So I asked him to sit down with us and help us form one. And we built one that has action items that, focuses for us that are year after year after year. Like, I don't imagine the focuses for our business plan ever changing. It's only the action items that will go under each category, that sort of thing. And so year after year, we will build a business plan. We will decide what are the things that we need to get done this year. We always leave a little bit of room for magic, because magical things come along, right? Opportunities come along, and you want to be in a place to take advantage of the good opportunities, but you also need to become discerning about what's going to get you ahead as far as your goals, and what is leading you on the merry path that goes astray into another direction that you have no plans on going down, and it's not going to further your goals. So, like I said, everything changed once we did this. So I don't know that having Becca necessarily made it all easier, because we were kind of struggling when it was just the two of us. We would always talk things out, which was super helpful. We were always on the same page when we would move forward. We always talked things through and our strategy through before we made decisions. All of those things have always been in place with us. But once we started following the business plan, it made a big difference, because the plan on a page that I use, that I've recommended that you link to, it puts everything, all your goals on a single page. You print it out, you put it on your wall right next to where you work. So every single time an action comes up, some opportunity, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. You look at your business plan and you see, you have to look at it and go, is there really room for this thing? Or is this pie in the sky? It's impossible. And then you have to decide, okay, well, I really want to do this thing. So what am I willing to sacrifice? Sometimes when it comes down to sacrificing, there's things on that list that you're like, okay, you know what? This thing is more important than that thing. So I'm going to talk to Becca, and we're going to have a conversation about taking advantage of this and letting go of this other thing. Sometimes that may be where you get, but other times you realize it's apples and oranges, and that you just need to stick to the plan.
I'm giggling back here again, because the thing that I usually sacrifice is sleep or self-care. That's probably why I end up in a mess.
100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a writer out there that doesn't sacrifice those things. We all do, but we also, we want to move forward without regret, right? You don't want to be at the end of the year looking at your business plan and going, oh, man, like, what happened? And I didn't get this done, and I didn't get that done, and now I feel like I'm more behind. You know what I mean? And that feeling can just drag you down. Yeah, it can make you feel like I can't be successful because I just can't get it together. And so we really want to be, deciding what's important and following through. That's what makes us feel successful.
There's so many things that you're saying that resonate, and that's the weird thing is, even though this has been the biggest year ever because I left my job, that's also where I've got to. I've got to the point where I feel like I'm failing because I've left my job, and actually I haven't completed any of the things in the first 6 months that I wanted to complete. And it's not because I haven't been trying, it's just because I've been doing the wrong things. And part of that is about managing the client work versus managing my work. But yeah, so many things that you're saying are making me have like mini epiphanies. So thank you.
I think a thing to sort of think about is a lot of us don't have a business background. And yet being a writer, guess what? Yeah. It's a business, right? Our intellectual property is a business, whether or not we want to think about it that way or not. And so all of a sudden we're forced to wear a different head, or a different hat than we're a different head. That's just a really bad image. So we're used to wearing a different hat all of a sudden, maybe something that we're not comfortable with, that wasn't associated with our day job, if we had a day job or we had a job before. And so it's all new and it's all fresh. And I guess where I come down to is the question, when you first took your pen to a piece of paper and started writing, you first started typing the very first sentence to your first story, were you an expert? No. It takes time to learn these skills. So give yourself a break. I mean, you just transitioned to full-time writer, and it's going to take a while to figure out what this looks like for you and what you can accomplish and what you should focus on and what you shouldn't focus on. I mean, right now, it's like Pandora's box is open and all the goodies are on the table, and you're like a kid, with candy everywhere, and oh my God, what do I eat first? Because there's all these possibilities for you in your business and where it can go. But you need to just slow down and figure out, okay, let's pace ourselves and let's figure out what are the most key elements to have in place so that everything else that comes along is just going to be so much easier. And so definitely, cut yourself a break, invest time into talking to people about, what is it like to have a business when you're a writer? How did you make that shift from writing to marketing to running a business? Like, how did you make that leap? Because it is not necessarily an easy shift for a lot of people. It wasn't for me. It wasn't natural, especially marketing, because I'm not big on look at me promotion. Oh my gosh, I don't like that at all. So marketing was tough until I figured out a way to do it that is me, which is helping other people. I like doing that. It doesn't feel like marketing at all. It's perfect fit. So there's a lot of information out there now, I think, as far as becoming, turning yourself into a functional business as a writer. So yeah, just search for it.
Amazing. Thank you. Okay. Penultimate question then. This is the Rebel Author podcast. So tell me about a time you unleashed your inner rebel.
I would have to say it was probably in 2012 when Becca and I self-published the Emotion Thesaurus. And the reason why that was super rebellious was because, like I said, back then, it wasn't like it is now. There was a lot of stigma around self-publishing. There was a lot of traditional industry sort of looking down on people who self-published. And so not only were Becca and I self-publishing a book at that time, but we were self-publishing a writing guide in the very industry that was very negative towards self-publishing in general. And we were putting ourselves up there as an authority among people that were, best-selling authors and agents and editors. Because, I mean, back then, all the books, they were all like the Writer's Digest books. It was like Donald Moss and James Scott Bell and all these incredible, like, super smart people that have so much knowledge in their heads about writing and publishing. And here we are with our little, Emotion Thesaurus guide saying, hey, yeah, we know a lot about this, and we'll just put this on the shelf here. And I think that really... it took a lot of guts for us to do that. And there was certainly a lot of imposter syndrome that we had to work through because Becca and I both came from the traditional industry route where, it's years and years of submitting work, being told you're not good enough, getting an agent. The agent doesn't work out. You let go of your agent. You get another agent. You get to acquisitions. It doesn't work out. You query again, and then it goes to acquisitions again. And, like that whole pattern of this isn't right for us. You're a square peg trying to be fit into a round hole. It really does eat away at your self-confidence. It makes you feel like, you're a poser, you're an imposter. So the fact that we came from that, we were unpublished. We didn't have any traditionally published novels at that point in time. We were not editors. We were not best-selling authors. We were not agents in any way. We didn't have any of that education or clout or authority, and yet we published that book anyway. That was definitely our rebel moment.
I love it. And I love also, you sort of alluded to this earlier, that even the structure of your craft book is kind of rebellious because it is not your standard, flowing prose type craft book. So yeah, I think you guys are both like secret rebels, or maybe not so secret, maybe open rebels. Yeah. So tell listeners where they can find out more about you and your books and your website and everything.
Well, I like social media, so I am almost everywhere. So definitely look up my name, Angela Ackerman, and you'll find me on Twitter, Facebook, all those kind of good places. Definitely come to Writers Helping Writers. That's the blog that Becca and I run together. We've been doing it now for, I think, like 13 years, which makes me feel super old.
Oh my goodness.
But, I know, right? But there's just so much incredible knowledge there. We have the Resident Writing Coach program, which Sasha is a part of.
Oh, stop.
We invite incredible minds from all over to share their viewpoints on writing craft. And it's fantastic because different voices, you get different insight, and everybody benefits. So definitely come. There's so many great articles, especially on anything to do with writing craft, show, don't tell, description, emotion. These are all things that we're really well known for. You can also find me at One Stop for Writers. It's the site that Becca and I run with Lee Powell. Again, it's my happy place. It's where I get to create all these really great things that are going to help writers focus on their writing and get their books out faster and make everything easier. There is a free trial if you want to check it out. So there's no barrier to do that if you would like that. That's basically where you can find me. That's onestopforwriters.com and writershelpingwriters.net.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you very much to all of the patrons supporting the show. If you would like to get early access to all of the episodes, you can do so by visiting www.patreon.com/Sasha Black, and that is Sasha with a C. Thank you to everybody listening. I'm Sasha Black. You were listening to the amazing Angela Ackerman, and this was the Rebel Author Podcast. Next week, I'll be talking to Joan Dempsey all about how to create diverse characters, how you can do it with authenticity, and how you can get it right. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.